Ciao,
Hi, Miss
Michael.
Sarah. How are you?
Very good, very good. How are you?
I'm great, great. Thank you. Thank you. Good to see you.
Mamma mia, I'm seeing a big face here. My face, it's terrible. Oh my God. So, Michael, I was just introducing you, but I really would love if you tell us a little bit about how you started your career, the many, many incredible pieces that you have done for the best of the best of design companies. Maybe you can give us a little bit more
Sure.
flavor.
I don't know how far back you would like me to go, but I'm happy to go
Just what
right
you
back.
think is it's relevant because not everyone knows about design and they're following us, so that can.
Sure, sure.
Okay, just one thing. So, Bye Bev is just saying that. Okay, she's been a little bit late. Okay, because I'm always late, so people are all complaining. So sorry, everyone, if I'm late.
I finished the Royal College of Art. I trained as a civil engineer because my parents basically didn't want me to become an artist. Their fear of me not being able to get a job was like was so big that they said you have to make sure you study something that where you can earn money. They never thought design was an option in that way. So I finished my civil engineering degree, and after that, I went to the Royal College to really study design, 2 years. And I spent a long time after that developing my work, but primarily mainly using those years as research on what I wanted design to be. So it was. It was just because my design education was so brief of 2 years at the Royal College on a master's level was not really enough. Everybody around me had already done their foundation, their BA, they already knew so much in design. And for me, it was a new field. And I struggled quite a lot about it, about, my role in what I wanted myself, defined as an industrial designer, and developed in those years quite a lot of experimental work. I did a lot of collaborative work with Dan and Raby, which many people are not really aware about, but at the same time, it was hugely exhibited around the world. It was featured in many shows, at the MoMA in New York, here at the ICA in London, and in many other reputable institutions. Eventually, it got even acquired by public collections like the Victoria and Albert Museum. But it was interesting because, what really bothered me all the time was what defined my role as a product designer. And I figured out sooner or later my passion for design and designing beautiful objects, and also my role as in my contribution to industrial production. So, and at that time I decided to kind of revise what it was that I was doing, and the best thing I could come up with was to decide to set up my own brand. And in 2007, I set up my own brand of lighting, designing, producing, and selling, lighting. And
So you went straight full blown.
I went straight through full blow, Sarah, because, for a lot of reasons, I didn't want this to be compromised in whatever way.
Of course.
I didn't want to depend on any manufacturers, and I didn't want my insecurities or even my lack of experience in the field to compromise the result. So I said the only way that I can actually communicate my vision in the purest possible way was actually to have full control of it. So
Michael, how would you, because for who doesn't know your work, which I think is very few people, but how would you define your handwriting?
Well, I think what I like to talk about is mainly my process rather than actually what defines my style or what it is that I do. I use a very reductive process in searching what I want the object to be. I mean, I start simply by removing information and layers of information that I believe are unnecessary in the object. And after I reach the point where there's nothing else really that I can actually remove because the object would no longer exist, is where I stop. And so I guess a lot of people say that I'm a minimalist, or I'm a reductionist. I am whatever it is. I like simplicity in design for sure, because simple things is what I really understand. And I think if you are to make an object interesting, it's interesting to add intellectual layers of information and not really visual layers of information. So,
okay. Can you elaborate a little bit on this? Because on this we share now with Valextra quite a bit of similarities. Simple doesn't mean that is not complex or not that doesn't have depth. So how do you what do you mean when you say that?
Well, I mean, design is quite a complex field. I mean, obviously I see design as any other creative practice at the end of the day, and I don't see any difference between being a designer, being an artist, being an architect. I mean, you are a creative person, and I'm trying to kind of define this just purely because I don't want to make a distinction with somebody being an artist, in the sense that what defines an artist is a personal approach at the end of the day. Maybe somebody might argue that, as a designer, I hold more responsibility because I'm designing objects that people, eventually are going to use, which is, there's an element of truth in that. But at the end of the day, there's artists that make objects too, and people are use them. So if it works for somebody, it works. And this is the point where you touch an audience with some respects, and some people will like it, some people will not like it, and this is the reality of it. And
a lot of people like your things, because I can see them everywhere nowadays. Any movie, anything, I see the lamp of Michael Anastasiades. But you don't do only lamps. Now you do tables. You've done many things. You've done bags with us. So how come you became so famous in the light in the light business? What do you think made it?
Simply because in 2007, when I decided to start producing my own work and my own designs, I decided to focus in lighting just purely because it was going to be more manageable for me to do so. If I was to focus on something, then at least I didn't have to kind of do everything and produce everything from furniture. I mean, I had ideas for furniture, but I was only producing them as one-offs for my own use and maybe some friends. But in terms of pieces available for people to buy, it was purely lighting. And, obviously putting so much work into defining a new brand, starting a new brand, designing for it, and people started seeing these pieces. And then Floss was the first company that picked on that and saw my work. And then we met in 2011. That's if you like 4 years later down the line after I set up my brand, and this was an invitation, really the moment of invitation for me to embark on a new relationship, on a larger scale production with a big historical company like Floss. And we went on this journey. So, Floss being a lighting brand, I found myself producing even more lights. And it was only until a few years after that when other companies started approaching me and said, perhaps with the idea that if he can do lights, maybe he has ideas about other things. And this is how it started.
Of course. And like now, because with the lockdown and everything, how you're producing, what are you doing, how is going along? I suppose everything is closed. In Italy, everything at least is still closed mostly. So how difficult is in this moment to
well,
go on?
There's two sides to my activity. One is the studio, and it's
Mm-hmm.
my team of designers that I work closely with. And we design for my own brand. We design for special projects and bespoke pieces, but at the same time, we design also for a lot of other brands. And then there is the brand side of my business, and so trying to keep those two alive during a moment of a lockdown. You know, we still have the warehouse up in Birmingham, so basically we can we function, we assemble orders, and we dispatch them to clients.
But that's good. That's better than Italy.
Well, we try to keep obviously the rules of social distancing, so we reduce the staff to a bare minimum that we could possibly have in one space, and actually not put anybody at risk. And this was actually a big priority for me. The studio, we decided to close it completely and send everybody home. And then we are working remotely through video chats and things like that. So.
And Michael, all the projects that were going on for il Salone, what's you know what's happening there? Is it are you guys organizing something virtual? Are you thinking about different fairs? How the companies that you're collaborating are thinking about substituting or doing something about 1 year of such an important moment. So
it's everyone is handling it different. I mean, everybody is aware that Salone is really a very stressful deadline that everybody is trying to meet, and everybody is racing against the clock when the time of Salone is arriving. And then sometimes even companies are really working day and night to try to finish an object or a product to launch at the fair. You know, those companies, obviously they have a lot more time available now in their hands to complete that, because, you know, all these indications for a lockdown started early March. Therefore, it was very unlikely that Salone was going to take place, and then eventually whether it was going to be postponed or eventually being canceled as it has been. So some of the companies, though, have decided to go ahead and launch their products. So in terms of virtual launches, in cases, and I guess when things start opening up, they're going to have small exhibitions and small events, individual events in different countries in order to feature the product. So they are not necessarily holding this surprise until until April next year.
And Michael, are you taking this time to create new things, changing? I don't know. A lot of us are staying at home for quite a bit. Are you reconsidering objects in the home?
Well, spending so much in my own environment, I mean, is not is very much in line with what I was doing before, in terms of trying out, you know, the pieces that I design. I mean, my home has always been a platform where I design. You know, I use everyday objects, and usually all these light fixtures, pieces that I design first arrive in my house as you
So
know,
is
as
there
a text.
anything that we can see? Is there anything we can see? Can we
Lots
have
of,
a peep in your house?
I have this light right here above me, which is
Show
something
us.
that we just kind of
Let's see if we
launching.
can see.
Of course, let me just flip the camera.
Now, at this point, you have, wow, look at this.
The new
Beautiful.
lamp.
It's super fine.
Vertical, and it's quite an interesting, intelligent light. I mean, in the sense that it has a downlighter and also an uplighter that illuminates up and down, and you can control it, you know, dim it down to the full. So this is one piece. I mean, some other pieces around, but.
And what about the table that you just showed us a little bit? I saw a table. Ah, this is beautiful. How can you do it so fine? It looks like
well,
so thin.
It's a visual trick. I mean, this is a walnut table. I designed this probably about 15 years ago for this space, and it's interesting because it's actually.
But we're not hearing you, Michael.
Sorry, can you hear me now,
Yes,
Sarah?
perfect.
Was
So
probably...
there is, what is a 45, 43 angle?
It's at 45 angles,
Okay,
so
40,
you know the perception of seeing a very thin top is basically something that you experience from a certain height, and also from sitting down you don't really see that much. So you know you always perceive that thin tabletop. So it's only when you go down that you actually see, you know, the detail of the table. I don't know whether you can see
yeah,
very
no,
clearly.
you can see.
And also the different facets that you have here. I just want to just show.
Yeah, all the corners.
Yeah. So
Amazing.
this is what it is. And
and I see at the back your famous stones. Can you tell us a little bit the story of the stones? We have used them also in our
Valextra.
Milan store. You lended us. They're amazing. Yeah, what's the story about this? Again, there's a minimalistic, beautiful, just incredible shapes and texture.
These are lingam, Shiva lingam stones from India that I've been collecting for the last 15 years. They're actually natural. The shape is natural, and you find them. You know, you can't actually collect them yourself. You can't pick them up yourself.
So you have to buy them.
You have to buy them, and there's a special community.
Beautiful. This one with the double color is incredible.
Yeah,
like the nature, it's really incredible.
Yeah. So the shape is acquired by simply that they roll on the riverbed for miles, and then they get this egg form. Yeah, and they're really amazing. I mean, they're really magical in terms of their markings, and you can see, you know, the details of these pieces. But they are sacred stones. So I'll show you also. You know, they're all over my house.
Wow, mamma mia!
So you have to be careful not to trip on the.
If you wake up at night, you have to really be careful there.
Yes, exactly.
A potential thief is not going to have a good encounter in your home. And this is your dining room. This is
a living room. Yeah, this
nice.
is a living.
Tell us more about your pieces. So, what is that? Is it a mirror?
That's a mirror.
Oh, wow.
It's part of a limited edition collection that I designed about in 2007. It's called Copper Mirror. They're actually this faceted, you know, copper surface that comes out of the wall, as you can see. You know, the details of it. And then
it's a piece of art. It's not like a piece of design. It's really a piece of art. Beautiful.
Well, I'm a designer, so I do design. I don't do art.
But it's beautiful. And this.
And this is a cabinet. It's called the Birdcage Cabinet, which I designed for a Swedish company called Svängsten. is a historical company that was set up in the 1930s by Estrid Erickson together with Joseph Frank. And I did an exhibition in 2013, and it was an homage to Joseph Frank. So all the pieces were inspired by Joseph Frank pieces. So this is just a cabinet to put objects in. And the lamp that you see there is also one of the Sven stand pieces, as well as this, you know, island table that you see here, which is in the shape of an archipelago island in Stockholm.
And so you always did it with that. And after this also beautiful chair, the orange chair at the back. Is it the chair? Is it a sofa?
Yeah, the sofa
Super
is
nice.
from the 1930s. It's a tubular steel. I think probably German. I never managed to identify where it's from, but nobody really knew where it's from. So some other.
This is your light. But Michael,
for,
how much you change your home, and how much you keep your home the same across the years?
Well, it takes a long time for me to decide on objects and what to put in my house. You know, like this lamp, for example, which is has become, let's say, one of the iconic pieces of my collection. It's called the Tube Chandelier. But this took me a very long time, because when I started doing my own home, and you know, I demolished the whole interior, started building it from scratch, and then eventually, after creating this double height void, I looked around in what I could find that would be suitable for the space. And I found some pieces. Probably I couldn't afford them at the time. I saw some beautiful Geoponti chandeliers that I thought could be appropriate, but then I had to modify them. And then eventually I said, you know what?
Better than Michael Anastasiades, come on.
The better thing is that if I actually design my own. So this is actually the reason also for starting my brand. It was before the 2007 years, and that was the time that coincided to creating these pieces and wanting to do it that way.
So now, you basically have created the home, but you don't really change it often. So it's not like an evolutionary process. It's more like you found the right balance and you find comfortable there.
Once a piece finds its place in the house, it usually stays for a long time. I mean, the chandelier has stayed ever since I did the house. The lamp that I showed you right at the beginning replaced one of the mobile chandeliers that is also one of my designs that was there for years. But, you know, since we made this new lamp, I thought it could be quite interesting to try something different.
It's nice. So what for you makes a really comfortable house? What is your recommendation for people? Where do you start in defining a room?
Well, I think what makes what's comfortable for me is very uncomfortable for a lot of other people. And I'm saying that for as strange as it is, it sounds, it's really, I'm talking about the process. I mean, when because it takes me so long to decide about an object, you know, when, for example, I wanted to have a sofa to sit on. It took me years and years and years to actually find a sofa that I thought I could live with this sofa, because it's all about not being too much of a design statement, because we are surrounded with icons, and it was very difficult to also live with something that is too intense in your space for a very long time. I mean, I love a lot of the classic designs, and I would be happy to have those, but at the same time, identifying with one specific one as a designer and not having an opportunity to have designed your own sofa, then the dilemma is much bigger than that. So
I'm just curious, because people often evolve their homes, and especially with you producing also your own things. I was curious to know if you were, you know, switching things, changing them, and maybe with the new ones, or and what is the painting that you have at the back? You have
the painting is by an Italian artist who is based in London. It's called Enrico David, and I always loved his work. He's an amazing artist, and he's the artist that represented Italy in the Venice Biennale last year. And we've become close friends, and you know, I saw this painting that came up, and I thought it would be perfect for here.
It's the best when you have pieces of your friends. Not only you enjoy them, but there's a piece of their soul. Now, when you see them, you think about them. I think it's beautiful.
Because it's interesting to have a personal connection with things that you have. Of
course.
And for me, that's the most important thing of what defines and makes a home. I mean, going back to the question that you had before, what defines my home and that sense of comfort? I mean, it's really, for me, familiarity. And everything about familiarity is what captures, you know, this level of comfort. You know, whether it's friends that design things that mean something to you that is quite important, whether it's something that actually doesn't really scream for attention, you know, but maybe it's something also that it reminds you of something else that you have seen in the past. This is also interesting to turn it around. Everybody's, and especially in the design world, everybody's striving for originality, and they're desperately trying to shock. And this is not really my approach. It's not part of my design process at all. You know, I believe in new things. I believe in technology. I believe in, you know, research and in new materials and things like that. But at the same time, I don't mind the references being there. You know, a lot of the people, when I started designing, would see my light fixtures and they couldn't actually place the time that these were designed. And at the beginning, I struggled with that idea because I didn't know whether I would take it as an insult, in the sense that here is a designer that designing retro style fittings.
No, it was very timeless.
Well, in the end, this is what I actually realized, that actually embracing that idea of ambiguity is what establishes timelessness in design, and this is something that, you know, I started believing in more and more. And I'm sure you're familiar also in our process when working with Valextra. I mean, it was interesting, although it was the exercise was interesting. You know, it was redesigning an old kind of classic.
And making it modern, because that was, you know, taking it contemporary. And
yes.
I actually have one with me. I just decided to.
Yeah, I wish I had it. Unfortunately, it's in our warehouse in the archive.
This is it's a kind of big.
Yeah.
But this is it's really beautiful, and I love this flute, this element that is very you. But I think what everyone told us, that the piece that ended up being very, very interesting is this kind of shape that the actual
defines the handle and the
handle gets, gives it a sort of
that was an accident. It was a collaboration between you know, you and Michael Anastasiades, because it's interesting. I mean, you came up and you said, oh, I want a long strap and I don't want the strap to be exchanged and you know, replace the short strap with a long strap and all these issues. And you said, I want both straps to live at the same time. And I struggled with this. And so, you know, I said, how can I make both these handles work together and look elegant, you know, all the time? So the idea of introducing magnets that actually hold the two straps together.
So the idea is that you have a magnet. So we have a magnet here, a magnet here. Yeah. So it always ends up in a magnet here and a magnet here. So wherever you use it, that actually this is not being placed. It just goes back because of the magnets. So it's always
Exactly.
perfect. Like everything that you do is always perfect. It's always. But can you tell us about? No, but seriously, the process that you went through to create a bag that would be Valextra, but in the same time spoke your language.
Well, it's no different than anything else I do. I mean, I had never done a bike before, and I
And by the way,
take.
super light, eh? It's like a super, super, super light. No, because someone is asking me if it's a heavy, and someone
Yes.
else told me that I have a lot of makeup, but just for everyone, I have no makeup. Da da da. Unfortunately, it's my 50 years old skin.
I like the evolution of our conversations. Like it sounds like a telemarketing thing a
No,
little
no,
bit. So I
it's
hope
because
it doesn't.
I'm reading some questions, and I think it's interesting to get also the people that are asking us.
No, absolutely, absolutely. It was only a joke, but I like the tone of the conversation. I said, "What does this remind me of?" I mean, it reminds me of those things, but just at that
I'm
time.
so
But
bad at this. I'm so bad. So no, but I remember when we were working together that you were like, let's take out everything. Now you wanted to take out the zip, you wanted to take out the pocket, you wanted to take out the costa. So it was really about what you said before. Now really cleaning it up as much as you
yeah,
could.
and the texture as well of the signature leather that defines Valextra. Not that I don't like it, I love it. It's beautiful, but it's very clearly identifiable. And I thought that this idea of removing everything was interesting to extend to actually removing the texture. And although the bag is also available in your texture patterned leather, which is
Of
very
course.
beautiful, you
But
can.
why this element? So what is the purpose of the element
Well,
on
the
top?
idea of bringing that element of first, color, luxury, and what defines, let's say, my practice. I mean, I use a lot of brass in my work. So we clearly all established that it would be interesting to have one focal point that could actually be made out of brass, and this is when the handle just didn't, this brass element didn't just sit on the bag. It doesn't just sit on the bag, but it becomes really the attachment of the strap. So it has a function, and this is what is the most important part of it. It's not just a decorative object.
And now just to go on the televendita, no, but how do you, when you had to work with us, we told you about us, but how did you define in your head and with your aesthetic Valextra? What was your summary of what you had to take out for us?
Well, Valextra for me is a beautiful brand, historical brand, and that has always had a very, very strong connection to architecture and design. I never really saw Valextra as a fashion brand. For me, Valextra doesn't deal with fashion. Valextra is a design brand. Valextra is an architectural, brand. I mean, if it could be like, let's say, an architectural brand. I mean, you work with all these incredible architects to design your interiors. You pay so much attention to, everything that surrounds you. The idea that also you have these pieces being there for a long time. I mean, those designs are virtually unchanged throughout all these years. All these design icons are so timeless that it's it actually goes against everything that says fashion, really. And this is what attracted me to it, because it's different. It's a brand that is different than everything else. And I thought that the idea of getting into this challenge of designing something, a redesign of a bag, rather than just simply inserting or introducing an accessory on a bag that is already there, or designing some graphic element, that was not going to be something that I would favor personally. So that's why I wanted to push it as far as I possibly could. And I think it's great because you know, I have to say that you were very receptive to all these suggestions.
But we
And
love, we do this because we learn. We like working, and people like you gave us so many insights, and it's a way to grow. And I think that's the whole idea of having this kind of collaboration. There's always a piece that remains, and also for the future, regardless the piece, but also the experience. I think for us was very, very important.
And what was important for me is the fact to work with a team. I mean, you know, the team is so special. The fact that you've got a small team of people that you know, they're all there to support you, I think was the biggest pleasure of the collaboration. And that's what made the relationship work so well. So
And we traveled
I'm very
together.
happy.
We went to, we made you work so much. We went to Japan. We went to China. It was also nice. It was a way to know each other much more. Mm? But
Absolutely.
And after I was so in love that I asked you to design our first ever jewelry. Now, so I put today this.
Yes, this is what I was going to comment on, but
no, I love
nice
it. I love it. Yeah. Why don't you explain the philosophy in here? There are the two rings that I also love. I put on
jewelry is something that I love, and I always have done. I never done it commercially. I always used to make jewelry for friends. Even as a child, I remember sort of, you know, crafting things up and giving them to all my girlfriends and saying, this is something I make. Sometimes it would fall apart after a day, but it didn't really matter. It would give me so much pleasure that somebody was actually wearing something that I had made. So when your suggestion, could you design jewelry, and was very welcomed, and it was interesting because the actual design came, the starting point for the design was actually this gold spiral earring that was part of the Metropolitan collection. It's a Cypriot antique piece in gold, but it becomes almost quite like a game, because, you know, the idea of a spiral, of a circle sort of going round, and how many times is going to be a spiral. So it's 1 or 1.5 turns or 2 turns. So it became
which is like
like an exercise.
the actual,
exactly.
you know, that there's this one of 3 and this, but they can also open and close. So, but the circle was a very important element in your design, and also,
but also,
and you can see it a little bit like your table. You can see it at 1 piece or 2 pieces, and there's always this mechanic element also that I find I've never seen it in any jeweler.
Yeah, because the individual rings actually, they slide against each other and then create the opening for you to put it through your hands. And this is what is great about it. You know, it became an interesting exercise on how you actually put something on that it looks okay, you know, while you're wearing it, but at the same time it has all these historical reference, which were very, very important.
I had a friend from Russia that she came to our presentation, and she bought both of them there on the spot.
That's great.
Gold, eh? Yeah, so
that's great.
I love it. She's probably seeing us today. No, it's really, I love the fact that, you know, how can you invent something new in something like a bag and a jewelry, you know, because they've been done, especially jewelry, for century. But after you come with something incredibly simple and it's still completely different from what is around. And
but it was also interesting to extend, I think, the launch beyond the focus of just the bag, and I think it was good, because, you know, there's so much attention going on to one product that it was interesting that suddenly there were all these spin-offs of the of the launch into the jewelry, the lamp that we did also for the stores, and so it becomes more of an interesting story, I think.
Yeah, and
way,
defines
like
also better the woman,
context.
no? Defines also better the woman that uses it, uses the bag, uses the, it kind of giving some dots that somehow defines that idea. Or when you design, you don't think about the person that is using it.
Well, for me, it's rather than defining the person, is more putting context in the whole picture of your design, you know, because the story extends into a number of products rather than actually all the attention and everything that you're trying to communicate is through one, you know, precious kind of object in that sense. So.
And what about color? So your pieces often are natural material, and as you said, a lot of brass. With us, you had to define your color palette. We didn't say anything. We said choose what you want. How did you go about that? Because color is such an important element, also psychological.
Well, originally, if you remember right from the start, I said, okay, let's have the bag in black, because that's how the idea of what defines the shape in the ultimate way. And if we wanted to provide a variation, perhaps we could introduce a white or an off-white color. So, but then after that, I realized, and also this is something that is has started appearing also through my work, is that use of color. You know, in some pieces that I've designed, I've introduced this kind of color, this burgundy color, and then last year I launched some of my light fixtures in this blue, and so all of a sudden it was becoming a little bit easier, let's say, to try to introduce color into the Valextra range. And I said, okay, you know what, if the color is chosen in the right way, it will work. And you know, it's obviously a suggestion, and I know that there's always that flexibility in your brand, that somebody can order something in something else, or it becomes, you know, a bespoke item. But it's nice to give your vision through certain very defined colors.
Yeah, because for example, I have here, oops, let me disappear. But I think now this pink is incredible. And, you know, it was interesting because it's a color that has been very popular in the fashion world in this season. We've not seen it so much just because we've all been at home. But I thought was very interesting that you coming from a different, you know, obviously from design, and for some reason, I never connect you with the pink. When you chose pink, I was very surprised.
Well, I think it's more this idea of this almost like kind of makeup color, you know, this idea of blush, you know, and for me, it's something that was interesting, even conceptually. I like that connection, you know, the idea of using a color which is, you know, makeup color, you know, it's interesting. It's something that you put on the skin. I mean, obviously everybody has a different color skin, but, you know, I was speaking more about, let's say, the one that I'm used to, let's say.
Of course, but it's also, there's a softness and a beautiful, you know, it's really, yeah, soothing, and it's actually a neutral. So, Michael, going back to our times now, what are you thinking is going to happen? And so once that, are we going to go back to normality? Is it something is going to affect us? I was looking at very nice interview that Patricia Crolla did to Olaf Eliasson yesterday. And yeah, the concept of time and things that change, but sometimes they're always the same. So what are your expectations and what you would change in your life?
Well, I find it very, I hope you're not hearing this drilling noise, but you know, it's kind of probably from next door that they're doing work.
No, it's perfect. Perfect.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's something that is so new, you know, to the times that we're living, and you know, this thing has caught us in such a surprise that forced people to spend so much time in isolation, and also obviously not just in isolation. For a lot of people, it was much more severe than that. You know, their health was compromised, or they lost somebody they knew, or a loved one, and that's really, really harsh thing to deal with. But what spending so much time with yourself, you realize actually, you know, you start thinking and questioning, you know, things that you're doing, and whether these are the right things. And usually there are moments where revelations come, discoveries about things. But I think that's individual. It entirely depends on individuals. I mean, in my practice, I've always done things very, very slowly, and giving time or stepping back from everything that I do has been part of my of the way that I work. So yes, this will encourage me to do even more in that way. But then again, it's you know, it's hard. It's hard because it's hard to also predict what's going to happen. I mean, I'm hoping that people will be more thoughtful and more considerate to each other.
No, but the slowing down is really the big thing about everyone. Now everyone has said we were running, spending, and if there is one thing that is positive, is the time to. We are in a sort of bubble and limbo, and trying to rethink about it. We also have to not to think too much about reconsidering everything, because there's also a lot of good stuff, no? And
but what is more crazy, Sarah, is how our perception of time has changed. I mean, just even purely on a very practical level, you would think by staying at home, you don't have to travel. Therefore, you know, you can you eliminate, let's say, the traveling time back and from work, and therefore, theoretically, you have more time. I find that these days the time flies so quickly that the end of the day arrives, and you have only accomplished one thing. And it makes you think that, how did I do it before? How was it possible that I could fit and do all those things? But I don't know. On one hand, I see this as this slowness somehow as a positive thing.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, because it's you know, you spend a lot more time questioning what it is that you do, and you make sure that it's right.
And I think this speaks a little bit about what we do, no? Like we really trying to do pieces that last, that stay, that are not just transient or thing for the moment. And I think that is linked also with the concept of timeless and just not, yeah, just more thoughtful.
But it's also very, very hard, because the whole system is set up in such a way to force you to do exactly the opposite. And this is what is the most important thing, is how do you actually resist? Because we spend most of our energy in resisting, you know, this speed of things, this idea of the image. I mean, here we are on social media. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of social media, but, you know, I understand their positioning. But everybody wants to be a star. Everybody, it's all about how they promote themselves.
Yeah, but it's
know,
also
through
interesting.
this
For but for me, the whole idea of also this kind of conversation is also to share our thoughts. I think a lot of us are
No, that's
really
totally
questioning.
different. What it is that we're doing is totally different. And I'm talking about this idea of, you know, the idea of the selfie, the idea
Okay.
of the
Okay.
image, the idea of actually, you know, wanting the new thing. And every time you want to feature something new, you want to be the first one that features something new. you want to be ahead of everybody else. You want to have many followers. So it's all about how you portray your personal sort of ego, how you push it out into the world. And when you're trying to do something completely the opposite and give it a lot of thought and time, consideration in creating, in designing, you feel like you're losing the game somehow, because that's at least what appears to the outside. So I have to say that also it must be quite hard for a company like Valextra to survive, you know, within this kind of very aggressive world of fashion.
But we are the small outliers. No, we're the little ones. But we try to keep true to our purposes. I think that's the real point in this moment. We have to put in discussion everything and consider that the world is changing, that the customer is changing. But at the end of the day, you cannot compromise your personality and your values, which I think is the concept, what you said before. For you, no, it's about being real and giving the best that you can, rationally and emotionally, and
but in a world which does exactly the opposite, as a you know, as a general, let's say, overview, when you look at who you are surrounded by, and let's say what other competitive products, if you want to call yourself as a competitive product, but you know, I see Valextra as a unique thing in any event. But in that sense, I'm trying to say that it's hard to have that resistance all the time. It is hard because everything tells us, you know,
to be
surrender.
It's true.
And embrace.
You're looking for the momentum. You're looking for the wow. So who doesn't do that?
Absolutely.
Who is simple and clean and minimal, and it's a little bit harder. Michael, I just want to ask you one question before we will have to end, because it's nearly 1 hour that we're having a chat.
Is it? Okay.
What would be the first thing you do once that you can go out? What is something that you're really missing?
If I had exactly the same freedom that I had before coronavirus appeared, I would get on a plane and go to swim in the Mediterranean Sea. This is the first thing that I would do. If I was to go into a slow release and I'm not allowed to travel, then I would go straight back to my studio, because the most important thing for me, and what I actually miss, is the physicality of materials and making things. So I'd love to get back into that, to make models, to make you know, real scale objects. I mean, I don't have a workshop. I don't have a home studio in the house, because the studio space is the one that where I used to escape in order to produce all these things. So now it's hard.
It's hard. Yes, I imagine. So what do you do to do your creativity? You cook? What is your creative, how do you put it? Are you in the kitchen, and are you the one cooking?
I do cook. I do cook every day, and I try to do things also properly, to properly eat and eat well and eat good things. But one thing that I've managed to do, which is a great thing after break out of the coronavirus, is and the lockdown basically forced me to rediscover my yoga practice, because it was something that I had neglected for a very long period of time, probably around 10 years. I stopped pretty much because of an old injury that I had. And then, so I found this the perfect opportunity to rediscover my practice. And actually, this is the 6th week that I completed in daily yoga practice.
Daily yoga, bravissimo.
Daily yoga
that's amazing. That's amazing. So cooking, but especially yoga. I think we are all trying. This is my 6th week that I do weekly double. Not very
Good,
good, but for me it's a
good,
lot.
good.
I used to be a sport person, and after bus, that's zero. So my husband Fabrizio is very happy with me. So
Well, it's difficult, you know, when you're locked up at home and you don't want to kind of, you know, put yourself or any other people in danger. I mean, unfortunately, you can't swim, you can't go to a pool, you can't go to the gym. Yes, you can go running if you're a running person, but you know, if you're not, then you know, what do you do? And it's interesting because I think yoga is perfect for this. I mean, it's perfect for all
yeah, but it's also
conditions,
meditating and
the fact that you don't necessarily need much space, and all you need is the size of your mat, really, and that's it.
And have you picked up any new hobby or reading or not? You don't
No,
have the
unfortunately
time.
not, because also having a brand and having a studio and trying to work
Too many
remotely,
things.
yeah, it comes with a lot of challenges. So unfortunately, I've been very preoccupied with all these challenges. I mean, nothing major as such, but you know, it's surprising how much effort it takes to put things right. And you know, you're trying to control this thing that is completely uncontrollable. You know, this uncertainty, and how long will
Did it
it
last?
be until we're back? Yes, of course.
Michael, we are now nearly done. So I want to thank you. We love you. Valextra, me, everyone. You are the best. Really incredible, incredible person. And I'm so glad that we have managed to share your thoughts, experience, a little bit of your home. And on next Wednesday, we will have Forma Fantasma, which is going to be super interesting from
Fantastic.
Amsterdam. And let's see what they have to tell us about what's going on. They were having an exhibition at the Serpentine, but unfortunately, again, these
It got
times of
closed
not.
down, yeah, shortly after it opened. I mean, at least a lot of people got to see it. I got to see it. It's a great show. So
It's a great show. Okay, so we
it's a
will
great
know
show.
more about that and their thoughts. Grazie, Michael, again. Love you so much.
Bye,
Thank you
Sarah.
again.
Thank
Ciao,
you.
ciao, ciao. Ciao.
Ciao. Thank you for this. Bye.
Bye, bye.